Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? So finally, the day has arrived. I finally got the Christopher Nolan collection, 4K UHD Blu-ray movies, and I'm gonna go ahead and test every and each one of those movies. They're bundled in this collection via Oppo UDP-203 and Sony X900E. So here it is. Here's my Oppo right there. My Oppo 4K player. I'll give you a little better close-up of it. I don't think I ever gave you guys a nice close-up of it. So that's what I want to do. I want to give you like a really good close-up. There it is. Right there. All right, and of course you see the Sony logo over here, so that means Sony. We'll be testing this via Sony XBR X900 Sony 4K 55-inch Bravia 4K TV. All right, so let's do this. So let's first start with Batman Begins, shall we? Let's do this. But first thing first, you guys need to see how it looks when you open the box. So I'm going to show you how the box looks. This is the box. When you open it, you get treated with all of the Christopher Nolan movies. They're all in here. These are all 4K movies. They're all in there, presented. So they're all there. And then down here, you get treated with a couple of more Blu-ray discs. These are the special editions where each movie special features are being stored. They reserve this on the Blu-ray so that way they can have the space for this right here, for the remastered 4K version of Christopher Nolan movies. Alright, so there you have it. You've seen the box and how it looks and when it's opened. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and we'll do some tests on the Oppo. We'll go to the stars, where no man has gone before. Here we go. Orion's Belt. So let's start with Batman Begins. Let's load it up to our Oppo UDP-203. And as I'm showing you the stills of the movie, I'm also going to do a calibration via Sony XBR X900E. We're going to do this in real time, like a POV, like a POV. Here we go. We'll do it POV style. There you go. Done. Okay, so this is what you get treated when you load a disc. You get a little introduction where Christian Bale, Bruce Wayne, is walking up to Shadow of... League of Shadows, I'm sorry, go up to League of Shadow on the snowy mountain, and then you get presented by Batman Begins. Now, before we start, this is the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and calibrate this as I'm showing you the scenes from the movie. So we're going to select scene selections here in the movie. Okay, we're going to choose a specific scene in the movie. Let's start the one with the ice, where they're like using the swords and they're fighting. We'll do the one scene on the ice, and then we're gonna go ahead and do a calibration for Batman Begins. Let's go ahead and let's do this really quick. Okay, so here we are. This is the one scene in the movie. So let's go right ahead and let's start adjusting. Let's go click on the action menu over here. And then let's go to our picture adjustments. Alright, there's a couple of things here that I've noticed that doesn't work well for this movie. This movie has a lot of cold and warm. This movie, it's really between cold and warm temperature. It switches between cold and warm, cold and warm. Now, my advice would be to keep it on a neutral temperature. Okay, what I would suggest is to keep it at a neutral color settings. So we're gonna go ahead and leave it on a neutral. So it's gonna be neutral. Let's go over here. Let's go to the color. Color temperature is neutral. Should you go with warm? Let me see. Neutral. Cold is too cool. Warm. Expert 1. Expert 2. Cool. You know, to me, it seems like the Expert 2 really gives a much better detail on the color here. Let me see. Like, the warm and neutral is too cool, but the Expert 1, it's also too warm. But you still has a, I don't know, it just, I get more detail like this. I'm in a predicament here. You know what, let's try Expert 2 mode. Let's leave it on the Expert 2 mode. Let's go back here to the video options. That's full. Okay. Black level is adjusted. I don't know if I should move my black levels any further. Maybe at 30. We could leave it at 30. Hold on. We can leave it at 30. Let's leave the black level adjustment at 30. That should do it. Let's go back. Now let's go check out some other scenes. Color at 60, that's fine. The only thing I changed here is just the color temperature. I left it at the Expert 2. So let's go check out and see how the scene looks right now on the movie. Let's go switch through some scenes here really quick. Here's another scene right here in the movie. I think Expert 2 seems like a very appropriate color. But you know what? Let me try, you know, I want to try something here really quick, guys. There's this mode called Cinema Pro mode, and I want to try the Cinema Mode Pro. Let me just see how well it is to work. So this is Cinema Pro, and honestly, Cinema Pro seems like the best picture setting here. Let me go ahead. Let me switch to another scene really quick. So yeah, it seems like Cinema Pro honestly is the best. If you want to use this feature, Cinema Pro, I highly recommend you use the Cinema Pro feature, which is already built into it, and it just looks amazing. But I'm really not impressed with the transfer here on the Batman Begins. I gotta be honest with you guys, I'm not like really impressed. It looks good, but it's nowhere near what I was expecting. There's still a lot of grain. There's still a lot of dirt. You know, they really haven't done much in terms of HDR. I don't see HDR popping out. Let me try some other scenes. Let me try a scene like down in the very middle of the movie. So let me see what I can get. So I'm not really like impressed here with the transfer. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm just not impressed with Batman Begins transfer here. It's not what I was expecting. I was expecting more of HDR, dynamic range of colors to pop. But let's go to some other scenes where there's more explosions and stuff happening. Let's see how well it looks. I mean, it looks good, but it's just not impressive. When you compare this to, like, let's say, Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Bram Stoker Dracula and all these other old movies, you know, this movie was filmed in 2005, 2004, you know. And I'm kind of disappointed that I know this movie wasn't shot in IMAX. I understand that. Only The Dark Knight was, and Dark Knight Rises. But still, I was expecting more in terms of transfer, and especially in terms of HDR. So yeah, guys, I'm not really impressed with the Batman Begins transfer here. I really expected something better, you know, which is kind of interesting, you know, that they haven't implemented. I really expected more color to pop, because I've seen Blade Runner, and I know how clean and how vibrant Blade Runner is. And we're talking about a very, very old movie. And here we are with the Batman Begins. I thought that they're going to maybe do a better transfer, but I just don't see it, guys. It just seems like they up-converted it and they upscaled it. Honestly, they really... I know they haven't done much of a transfer here. They haven't touched anything here. Because if they had remastered this, if they have touched this, I would have noticed the difference. You will not see a difference between this and an original Blu-ray. I guarantee you, man. You're not going to notice any difference. So Batman Begins, disappointment, you know. Okay, so on the certain scenes, I noticed a little bit of HDR pop. Like when there's an explosion, when there's action happening, you do notice a little bit of that HDR pop. But it's not like what I was really expecting, you know what I mean? You will notice HDR here and there, you know, when there's a big explosion, when there's action scenes, particle effects and all that stuff. You will notice that HDR, but it's really not like razor sharp like I was expecting it to be. I was expecting a better bit rate on this disc, you know, and I'm just not impressed here. Let me check the bit rate. Let's see. 62 mpbs. It's decent, you know. It's not like 84 or 87 like when you look at some other movies and they're 4K, they're like 87. So not impressed. So anyway, let's look at the bit rate here. It's a decent bit rate. It fluctuates. I was expecting a higher bit rate, to be honest with you, but it's 62.2 mpbs. I was expecting a higher one. It does use this HEVC Blu-ray disc media, but it seems they're not. This movie, it's really not encoded to like that high bit rate that I was expecting, and I'm kind of disappointed. Look, I'm just not impressed by Batman Begins. Really, there's not much of a difference between a Blu-ray version or the HDR version, which I'll probably have to check, but I don't think there's going to be a substantial difference here. Disappointed. Mr. Nolan, like, what the hell, man? These are your movies, bro. Especially Batman Begins is your first movie that started the whole thing. You should definitely pay more detail to the film and make it look better. Alright, let's go check out some more scenes really quick. Like on this scene, you will notice the HDR pop. You know, on certain scenes, you know, HDR will pop because of the explosion and reflection. So you will definitely notice that. But it's not like a demo, you know. It's not a 4K HDR demo like you want to show off something. I don't know, I'm just not impressed. Sorry, guys. I'm just not impressed. I believe this is coming from a guy who's seen a lot of 4K HDR remasters. And this is not impressed. I'm not impressed. Even poor Liam Neeson cannot save this movie from a horrible transfer. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry. Just I know you guys don't want to hear this, but I have to be honest with you. I'm just not impressed with Batman Begins. So let's move on to The Dark Knight. And I'm sure in The Dark Knight we're going to see a much better difference than what we just seen here on the Batman Begins because of the IMAX. So let's move on to Dark Knight. All right, so I went through my calibration on a television on not Samsung, the Sony XBR X900E, and I did some adjustments. Right now, I don't have a time to show you the calibration because I have so much to cover in this video with the other movies. But look, the transfer is good. Here's the deal with Batman Begins. The transfer is good. But to me, I don't see any kind of drastic difference where you have to purchase a 4K version. All right. I mean, you're really not going to notice that much of a difference between the Blu-ray version and the 4K version, honestly. You know, it's not like a drastic difference. On the Blade Runner, it's a huge difference because the bit rate, it's higher, and HDR, it's just done perfect. Okay? Here, they haven't really spent that much time on the bit rate and on the HDR, honestly. And I'm just trying to be honest with you guys. That's why I do these videos. I'm giving you my honest opinion. If you already have Batman Begins on a Blu-ray, put it on your Oppo. You're still going to get kind of similar experience here. All right? Minus the HDR. But HDR here, it's really not that active. Maybe on a certain scenes, but it's not like super active. All right? So there you have it. Now let's move on to Dark Knight, guys. Before we move into the Dark Knight, you know, there's some scenes in the movie here. I'm not trying to bash Batman Begins transfer. I understand it was filmed with certain millimeter cameras. I understand that. But on certain scenes, HDR will pop. Like on this airplane, you're going to see those red lines, those red stripes will pop with the color. The background and the tamarack here, you know, the surface from the reflection of the blue skies will be reflected here on the surface. You know, so there's definitely some advantages of HDR here. You know, I'm not saying that you're not going to see a difference between the Blu-ray version and this version. The Blu-ray version doesn't have HDR. This thing has HDR, and it's being encoded a little bit higher bit rate than the Blu-ray. But it's not like a stepping stone, like jaw-dropping difference, okay? Blade Runner, it's a gigantic difference between the Blu-ray and a 4K HDR. It's like a gigantic difference, all right? Here, that's not so much the case. You will still have HDR, but it's not like jaw-dropping or anything like that. All right, for the last time, let me move on to the Dark Knight. All right, for the last time, before I finish Batman Begins. And like I said, there are certain scenes in the movie where you notice the HDR. Like here, for example, you see that HDR being presented. Okay? Like if you look at the reflection from the sunlight inside the airplane. Like even right here, you can see the opposite of Christian Bale. Like you can see that reflection of the sun. So there's HDR. You know, I'm not saying that you're not going to enjoy HDR in Batman Begins, but it's just not what I was hoping for. That's all I'm trying to tell you. All right, so this is it for real. We got to move on to Batman, to Dark Knight really quick. Let's do this. I only have 20 minutes to finish this, so Dark Knight, let's do it. And here, as expected, obviously the Dark Knight looks very sharp. I mean, I see every detail. I even see the crane over here. There's a little crane over there, like working. I don't know if you guys can see it, like right over here, where my finger is. There's like a little crane there that's working on that building. I mean, the amount of detail that you see, it's ridiculous. But there's a good reason why you see Chicago, well, aka Gotham City. It was filmed in Chicago. There's a reason why you see it so good here. That's because it's being filmed in IMAX. This is an IMAX resolution, and of course, IMAX, they go up to like ridiculous amount of pixels. 18 million. I think this one was 18 million. 6K, 18 million pixels. So you got 18 million pixels and you add 4K to that. I mean, it's just going to look super awesome because it was shot on a higher density pixel ratio camera, IMAX camera. So here, obviously, as expected, the Dark Knight, this is where we truly see where the master NHDR is being implemented here. Let's go through some more scenes. And even here we see that the HDR definitely pops. The amount of detail you see on the color on the mask, the sharpness of detail, it just looks phenomenal. It just looks perfectly amazing. Very razor sharp. This is a hell of a lot better than what we have seen on a Batman Begins. So let's do some more scenes here. And even here, I mean, the amount of detail that's just presented, it's almost like as if you're looking at a photo, like somebody took a very high pixel ratio resolution photo and you're kind of looking at it through screen. It really looks razor sharp. It really looks great. So, as expected, it's obvious, it seems like the studio has spent more time remastering the Dark Knight version than they are Batman Begins, in my opinion. And even here, you know, the amount of detail, kind of like a depth of field that you see in the distance. My camera here, it's not doing it justice because I'm recording this 1080p with decent bit rate, so I can have 43-minute storage to film this, but you'll just have to take my word for it. You know, the Dark Knight definitely shines here on the 4K HDR. And even here, like the amount of detail you can see in the distance and in the building and even the scratches on the wall. I mean, there's so much detail that just pops on the screen. And even here inside a bank, colors pop from the yellow that's on these overhead lamps, and then to the green fluorescent lights there, like next to the bank desk. So it's just, you know, it pops with HDR here. Now you got IMAX with HDR mastered in 4K. So yeah, you definitely, Dark Knight is going to benefit here greatly, as it should. And even here, you know, the amount of detail that you just see. If you really pause this video and you look around and you look at this video and you examine it, you will just see just the transfer is just ridiculously sharp. Just pops with color as it should. So yeah, I mean, Dark Knight, as I suspected, looks great on the HDR 4K. Batman Begins, I'm a little bit disappointed, you know. And even here, I mean, just look at the detail, the stuff you see, it's just ridiculous. And even here, just look at that sharp detail. You can even see that ribbon with a horse that he has. You can even count the cotton on that suit. I mean, it's just sharp, razor sharp detail with HDR color. And even here, when the school bus goes in, it's just looks remarkably detailed. And here, the late Heath Ledger detail here is just remarkable. I don't think my camera does any justice here. You have to see this in person just to see how unbelievably sharp, detailed the Dark Knight is. They definitely spend a lot of time on the Dark Knight. I'm not kidding. And this is definitely the most important movie. The Dark Knight made so much money. And of course, Heath Ledger's performance. It's just the detail. It's stunning here. So yeah, I mean, look guys, the Dark Knight looks amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into Dark Knight Rises really quick, because I only have about maybe 16 minutes left to finish this Christopher Nolan collection. Look, Dark Knight looks outstanding. Outstanding. So, 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up, big time. Let's move on to the Dark Knight Rises. And of course, as suspected, Dark Knight Rises here, just blown away by just the detail, the amount of detail that just pops. That's because, you know, every time Christopher Nolan would make a movie after Dark Knight, he would amp up and use even higher IMAX millimeter detail cameras. So the higher detail on the cameras, obviously, the higher detail will be presented on the 4K master with the HDR, and this just looks stunning. You know, the Dark Knight Rises, absolutely stunning. Definitely a 4K demo HDR to show off your TV. Let me show you some more scenes. And here we are with yet another stunning, great detail. Again, you know, Dark Knight Rises here with the IMAX cameras, and a very high bitrate transfer here with HDR. It really looks sharp. My camera here, you guys have to remember, when you're watching this through your YouTube device video, whatever device you're using, it's not doing it justice unless you actually buy the disc, put the disc inside a 4K player, and you will see what I'm talking about. The detail, it's stunning. Another great example, it's right here, and you truly see that detail. I mean, it's just razor sharp. It almost feels that if it's three-dimensional, like the amount of detail that I see here now, it's really just amazing, you know. I've seen this movie, but I never seen it like this, in such sharp detail as I'm seeing it now. So Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises, they definitely amped up their game, and definitely those two movies look fantastic. Batman Begins, it's okay. It has HDR, it has nice 2K to 4K master, but it's nothing that's gonna make you drop your jaws, okay? This will make you drop your jaws. And here's another example as well. It looks very clean, looks very sharp, very detailed. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. This is why IMAX, you know, if you want your 4K to shine, then you should film all your movies in IMAX, possibly the entire movie in IMAX. And this is the end result, guys. You know, this is what you get when you're filming a movie with a very high-end IMAX cameras. This is the end result. And of course, here too, we see just how sharp and detailed the airplane is. The amount of stuff you can see on the airplane, the reflections. I mean, it just looks remarkable. Yeah, I guess the best word I can use, just really looks remarkable. Does it look better than Dark Knight Rises? Oh yeah, even better. But that's because, you know, Christopher Nolan kept, you know, raising the bar. He kept raising the bar on his IMAX cameras. Okay, let's go with a higher millimeter, you know, on the cameras. And every movie he did, he went with a higher millimeter IMAX cameras. And this is the end result. This is what you get. The end result was me hitting my tripod, and my GoPro, my GoPro Hero camera almost just flew off. But hey, find me a YouTube video that does a review of a 4K movies like I do here. Let's go step into a Interstellar. Let's do Interstellar right now. All right, Interstellar. I mean, right off the bat, the use of higher IMAX resolution millimeter cameras. We're talking 18 million pixels. In some cases, 33 million pixels. If it's a 75 millimeter or 77 millimeter, you're looking at like 33 million pixels. So we're looking at high, very high sharp density detail here. And of course, this looks even more mind-boggling. You know, my camera here, obviously, it's recording this at a 1080p, you know, a decent bit rate, so it's kind of hard for you to see that through this video, but you'll just have to trust me. It looks very, very sharp, detailed bit rate, as expected. This movie was released in 2014, right? So it's not that old of a movie, and obviously he used a very high-end IMAX cameras to film this entire thing. There's some CGI here, but not that much. And it looks stunning. And here you get to see that detail presented here, even on a close-up. Even when it's not IMAX, when it switches back and forth, you still see, even when it switches between 77 to 38 or 35 millimeters, you still see that the bit rate and the detail and HDR here, it's really done well. Okay, it's very sharp, and that's what you want in 4K. You want the sharp picture. You don't want blurry picture. You want sharp picture, and here you're getting that. And even here, we see it, just how sharp and vivid the image quality is here. Sure, there's some grain in this movie, but that's done purposely. But it's a grain that's sharp grain. You know, you see detail, you see things very vividly. Okay. And even here, when Anne Hathaway, you'll see that sure there's some grain, but even with movie that's not being presented in IMAX, when it switches between a regular 35mm to 77mm, you still notice that same bit rate, same sharpness. So you're not really, they didn't sacrifice bit rate for a regular scenes. So both IMAX and all the scenes pretty much are presented in the same constant bit rate, and it really looks sharp. So this is so far, let me see, Dark Knight Rises, Interstellar, they all seem to be done really well. Except maybe Batman Begins. I just really wasn't blown. I might have to watch it again, but I really wasn't blown away by Batman Begins. It's just my opinion. I mean, in terms of transfer quality, I love the movie. You know, it's not the movie. I love the movie. It's just the transfer quality. I expected more from Batman Begins. And of course, here as well, you know, there is grain. I just want you to know that. I don't want to mislead you. There is a grain in this film, but it's you barely care about it because there's so much depth of field. There's so much deepness into this transfer that you see everything. I see things that I didn't normally see when I first saw this movie. This is why the high resolution and a very high bit rate helps the movie detail, especially if it's filmed with a very high-end IMAX cameras. And then you implement the Oppo UDP-203 with its processing that it has built into it. You really see things that it's like a brand new experience. What I'm trying to say, when you're watching this on a very good transfer, which this is, you definitely appreciate this movie even more and the vision of the director, in this case, Christopher Nolan. And even here, when they're landing with this shuttle, when they're landing on this planet that's all just water. I don't want to spoil the movie for those of you who haven't seen it. It's not a big spoiler, but anyway. You see detail, like you see things like, you can see material that's implemented here and the dirt on this shuttle. Like you see things that you normally wouldn't see if you were watching on a very low bit rate on Blu-ray or scrambled